SAP ECC mainstream maintenance ends in 2027. Extended maintenance runs to 2030. And after that, you're on your own. SAP is actively selling licenses to private cloud and public cloud. Every major release, every innovation, every AI feature, all of it is cloud. Now, these three facts tell you something pretty clear. The SAP Basis admin role as it exists today is in its decline. Now, if you agree or disagree, drop it in the comments. I want to hear it. But before you disagree, answer me this one question. Which ECC customer is going to keep expensive running software after 2030 that's more expensive, unsupported, and falling behind every quarter? Would you do that? Would you bet your career on that? So, hi, I'm Noel Benjamin DeCosta. I've spent 25 years leading SAP transformations, over 100 organizations, $700 million in projects, and I've built basis teams. I've funded basis teams contracts. And I'm watching these contracts shrink by 40 to 60% in the last 18 months. Not because the systems went away, but because the work did. Let me show you exactly how this is happening. So let's talk about what a basis admin actually does today, day to day, the real stuff. You install SAP systems, you patch kernels, you manage transports, you run backups, you monitor performance, you handle system copies, you client refreshes, database administration. You keep the solution manager running, you troubleshoot dumps, you manage user access at the technical layer, the OS level work, the DB level work, the NetWeaver stack. That's been the job for 25 years, and every item that I just listed is being absorbed by something else. So start with RISE. Now, when a company moves to RISE, SAP takes over that infrastructure management, the hardware, the operating system, the database, the backups, the kernel patches, the disaster recovery. Now, that's not a rumor, that's the contract. So, SAP's roles and responsibilities document spells it out very clearly. There are 5 categories of services. The infrastructure layer goes to SAP. Now, SAP Inside a benchmark report from 2026 shows that 30% of organizations now are fully live on S4HANA Private Cloud, up from 19% last year. Legacy ECC usage dropped below 50% for the first time, and only 57% of ECC customers are expected to finish migration by end of 2027, which means that there is a massive wave still coming. So every one of those migrations removes basis infrastructure work from the customer side. Now take BTP, right? SAP's business technology platform. The extensions that used to sit inside your system on servers or managed by your team. They're all moving to BTP, the Cloud Foundry runtimes, the Kaima runtimes, the ABAP cloud environment. Now, SAP manages the upgrades. So, 4 major upgrade windows a year, and the maintenance is handled automatically. So, your team doesn't touch it. Then there's the cloud ALM. Solution Manager has been the basis admin's command center for the last 20 years. Now, transport management, system monitoring, change request management, job scheduling, all of it lived within Solman. Now, SAP has announced mainstream maintenance for Solution Manager ends on December 31st, 2027. So there's no new version after 7.2. So now the replacement is Cloud ALM and a completely different product, which is, cloud native, SaaS delivered, built on BTP, written in Java. It's not a BAP, not NetWeaver. And here's the thing, Cloud ALM does not cover everything, even that Solman did. So there's no full charm equivalent yet. The no data volume management, and it's leaner by design because SAP's entire philosophy shifted. Less to manage means less to manage manually. But in the new world, Rise with SAP owns the hardware. SAP owns the OS. SAP manages the database. SAP patches the kernel. SAP runs the backup. SAP handles disaster recovery. BTP runs your extension in Cloud Foundry or Kaima. And now SAP manages the upgrades. So Cloud ALM replaces Solution Manager, and it's a SaaS. So there's no installation, there's no maintenance, there's no NetWeaver. So what's left for you? So you have application layer configuration, you have transport coordination, you have the user and role management, some performance monitoring at the app level, security governance within the shared responsibility model, maybe incident coordination with SAP when something breaks. Now, that's real work. I mean, I'm not dismissing it, so don't get me wrong. But in the old world, a mid sized company needed around 3 to 5 dedicated basis people. In the new world, that same company needs one person doing it part time alongside all their other responsibilities. The job didn't get automated, it just got absorbed, and the platform ate it. Now, here's what makes this different from what happened to ABAP developers or functional consultants, right? Those roles are being squeezed by AI and clean code. Now, there's a debate about timelines, maybe around 2 years, maybe 4 years. With Basis, there's pretty much no debate, right? The moment a company signs a RISE contract, the scope of basis work drops immediately, not gradually, on day one. So let's talk about the excuses that a basis consultant might have or might plan in their mind in terms of this conversation. So let me go through it. So the first one is most companies haven't moved to RISE, right? There's years of on premise work still left. So true, there is a tail. ECC's extended maintenance runs to 2030 for those who pay the premium. Now, some companies will drag it out a little bit, but you're not building your career on companies that refuse to modernize. That's a shrinking pool of employers paying declining rates. So every quarter, the on premise install base gets smaller. The work isn't growing, it's winding down. When COBOL programmers came in, it was huge. Today, how many COBOL programmers are there? Do you still need COBOL? I don't think so. The pool of resources gets smaller and smaller, and you'll have that many number of employees who don't need that COBOL skills. So, excuse number two is RISE still needs basis skills. Even SAP says so. Now, SAP does say that, and they're technically right. Someone needs to coordinate with SAP on the service delivery. They need to accept technical alerts. They need to manage application layer configuration. But read that job description carefully. That's not a basis admin. That's a cloud service coordinator, and it's a fraction of the role. And companies are figuring out that they can have one person do it part time instead of a dedicated team. Now, I've seen this firsthand, right? A client of mine had a 5-person basis team supporting their ECC landscape. So after the RISE migration, one person handles SAP coordination alongside with all their other responsibilities. So what happens to the other four? They either get redeployed or they're released. So excuse number three is I'll just learn BTP and stay in the SAP world. Now, for me, that's a better answer than the others. But BTP is a development and integration platform. It's Cloud Foundry, it's Kaima, it's integration suite. The skills you need are more around API management, the CI/CD pipelines, the cloud native development, and that's a fundamentally different skill from kernel patches and transport routes, right? It's achievable, but don't underestimate the gap. You're not learning a new version of your job, you're learning a new job. So in this section, I'm going to talk about where the opportunity actually sits. So here's when your story is actually better than the functional consultants, right? A functional consultant's core skill is knowing how to configure SAP. Now that's very specific, very hard to transfer. But for a basis admin, your core skill is infrastructure. It's about systems, it's about performance, it's about security, it's about availability. It's about troubleshooting complex environments under pressure. Now that skill set translates, and it translates to the fastest growing market in enterprise technology. So, part one is your cloud infrastructure, which could be in the form of AWS or Azure or GCP. Every company migrating off on premise SAP needs cloud architects and cloud engineers. So, AWS is a very specific SAP certified specialization, and Azure has a massive SAP on Azure practice. Google Cloud is growing in their SAP partnership aggressively. Now, the hyperscalers are hiring, their partners are hiring, and they specifically want people who understand enterprise workloads, not someone who just learned cloud in a boot camp, right? Somebody who's actually managed mission critical systems that can't go down. That's you. And AWS Solution Architect certification combined with your SAP infrastructure knowledge puts you in a category most cloud engineers can't touch. You understand the workflow, they just understand the platform. The person who understands both, that's the role who gets the architectural role. So, path number two is DevOps and automation, right? So, SAP environments are moving towards the CI CD. Terraform for infrastructure as code, Ansible for configuration management, and Kubernetes for container orchestration. I've also seen Jenkins or Azure DevOps for pipelines. Now, the SAP world is late to this compared to the broader tech industry. And that's actually good for you because companies need people who can bridge SAP operations and modern DevOps. If you can automate an SAP landscape deployment using Terraform and manage it with Kubernetes, you're not competing with the other basis admins anymore. You're competing with the DevOps engineers and winning because you have context that they don't. Now, part number 3 is cloud security. So every RISE migration creates a shared responsibility model. So SAP manages the infrastructure security. The customer manages the application security, the data security, the identity and access management, the compliance. Now, there is a massive gap right here. And the SAP Insider Benchmark report found that only 62% of live RISE users rigorously follow the shared responsibility guidelines. Only a third conduct regular monitoring and auditing. Now, that's a security problem looking for someone to solve it. And the person who understands both the SAP security and the cloud security, there aren't enough of them. So, part number 4 is the SAP Cloud Service Management. So, someone has to manage the relationship between the customer and SAP in a RISE environment. So, you have the SLA monitoring, you have the incident coordination, the change management governance, the cost optimization across BTP services and RISE contracts. That's a real role. It's part technical, part vendor management, part financial. And it doesn't exist yet as a formal career path, which basically means that people who define it early will own it. So that's your opportunity. So the basis admin role isn't dying the way ABAP or the functional consulting roles are dying. It's transforming, but transformation only works if you actually transform. So staying on premise, waiting for things to stabilize is the worst move you can ever make. So the on premise world is shrinking, every month. So my personal suggestion would be pick a path, either, cloud infrastructure, DevOps, security, cloud service management, pick one and start now. So you have maybe around 18 to 24 months before the market gets crowded with all these displaced basis admins all trying to make the same move at the same time. So if you're a basis admin, drop a comment. Tell me your landscape, whether it's on-premise, RISE, or hybrid. Tell me your years of experience, and I'll tell you which path I would take if I were you. So in the next video, I'm going to talk about the 5 technical roles that are going to explode between 2026 and 2029. So if you want to know where the money is moving in the SAP ecosystem, that's the one you need to watch. So thanks for watching. I'm Noel Benjamin DeCosta, and I'll see you in the next one.